Have you been watching and enjoying my recent Aston Martin content and thinking, wow, I'd really like one of those, but I'm just not sure about the running cost, maintenance, or what to look out for? Well, good news everyone! I've teamed up with Bamford Rose to host a special open day just for my viewers on April 27th. There is no cost, it is a free to attend event, and we will have there examples of some of the more popular V8 platform Aston Martins with cars on the ramp and staff on hand to answer all of your questions. And if you're just an Aston fan who wants to come by, or perhaps have a car that you're willing to let people look at and sit in, then we'd also love to have you. In either case, please email me on talk@jm.com, as spaces will be limited and we do need to manage numbers. In any case, thank you for watching my content, and I hope you enjoyed today's video. Today I am driving an Aston Martin that at launch was considered by many to be one of the best cars the firm made. However, after just a few years was almost completely forgotten. But today I think is a bit of a bargain. This is the V8 Vantage N400 and it's rather good. Today's review is actually the result of a very happy coincidence because, as many of you may know, I currently own an Aston Martin DB9 that I purchased from my good friend Ben of the channel Dad Cars. That I bought with the intention of having it for about 6 to 9 months and then moving on and deciding whether I wanted to remain an Aston Martin owner. I am very happy to say that that car has sold much quicker than expected, and in the next week it is going to be delivered to its new and hopefully very happy owner, Cal. This then leaves me once again Astonless, and so I have been thinking what it is that I should get next. As it happens, it wasn't this car at all that I spoke to its owner Zolf about. Instead, it was his Ferrari F355, because he is the man that, as far as I am concerned, is keeping my 355 warm. That is the dream spec Le Mans Blue pre-airbag carbon seated car that I drove a little while ago and really rather loved. If I get a 355, it basically has to be that one. And I said to him, are you selling that car per chance? Because I'd hate to go and buy something else only to find out that was on the market. And he said, no, that's not going anywhere, but I am thinking of selling my Aston. And I said, what is it? He said, it's an N400 Roadster. And I thought, that's a pretty cool car actually. You really don't see or hear much about them. And when I went on YouTube, I saw there were basically no modern reviews explaining even what the N400 is, let alone driving one. So I said, do you mind if I do a bit of a film with it, and then you've got something of a sales pitch should you then decide you do really want to move it on? And he very kindly said, yeah, I'll bring the car to you. And here we are. So, what then is an N400? This is effectively the run-out special edition made at the end of pre-facelift V8 Vantage construction. That car had been introduced in 2005 and was generally very well loved, but did have a few issues. The N400 essentially sought to fix a few of them while still leaving a few unsolved ahead of the then incoming facelift. Top on the list of changes for the N400 is a boost in power from 380 horses to, you've guessed it, 400. And this was achieved through a combination of a remap for the ECU and a modification to the airbox, which gained a computer-controlled flap, meaning that at a certain RPM it opened, giving the engine just a little bit more air. This unleashed 20 extra brake horsepower and about 8 pound-foot. bringing the total torque up to around 311, that's 420 Newton meters. The fact is that though the regular 4.3 already had more power than the 911 of its day, a 997 Carrera S made something like 350 horses, these always weighed quite a bit more, some 1,620 kilos in coupe guise and more like 1,720 in Roadster form, so they always felt quite a bit slower than the Porsche, which was also a cheaper car. The naming of the N400 was a reference to Aston Martin's antics at everybody's favourite German toll road, the Nürburgring. On top of that power increase, the N400 also got an improved suspension setup featuring new Bilstein dampers and springs with a slightly stiffer setup, and for the coupe, a new anti-roll bar at the back. The car also came shod with a set of 19-inch alloys, as you would have seen on the DB9 Sportback, and there are a few cosmetic tweaks too, including a magnum silver treatment for the grille, the mesh on the bonnet, the side strakes. You've also got clear lenses at the back. The car was also fitted with what later became called the N400 sills, so a slightly more aggressive treatment for the side of the car that previously looked just a little bit flat. This makes it look a touch more purposeful, a touch more aggressive, but isn't over the top, and essentially was mimicked by almost all of the later Vantages. Inside, the car also came with a number of options now as standard, including Bluetooth phone preparation, the 700-watt Aston Martin premium sound system, which is actually very good, and though I always harp on about the B&O one with the pop-up tweeters, this actually is really, really decent as in-car stereos go. You also got perforated leather for these seats, a micro twirl effect thing for the sort of waterfall here, and most importantly, and not to be forgotten, a stitched version of the Nürburgring here in the center console, which I suspect is probably responsible for at least half of this car's extra power. It was available in one of just 3 colors, Bergwerk Black, Carousel Orange, or this, Lightning Silver. And though I often say I really don't like silver or grey Aston Martins, Lightning Silver is a rather spectacular shade, and one thing that lured Zolf to it when he picked it up 11 years ago. And to top it all off, the car was produced in strictly limited quantities, with just 240 of each coupe and Roadster being built, of which this is number 4. However, I have been told by a number of people that actually they suspect Aston never built the full 480, making this a relatively rare car. They later then reused the M branding for the N420 and the N430, both of which are based on the facelift 4.7 litre car. And it was that really that today makes this something of an oddity. You see, this car landed in 2007, in fact just 3 weeks after the DBS, but only a year later the facelift car appeared, and as soon as it did, that was the one that people wanted. However, the N400 remained relevant for quite a while because those newer cars commanded a significant premium, and many viewed this as a fairly worthwhile halfway step between a plain 4.3 Vantage and the later facelift car. Today though, with prices of the 4.7 being somewhat lower, the N400 is generally somewhat forgotten. And that's a shame, because it's actually really rather nice. First off, it looks sensational. Whichever colour you have it in, and actually I think the silver might be my pick of the trio, it is beautiful but not shouty. It exudes class in a way that I suspect is alien to the new, recently announced facelifted Vantage that just looks busy to me. This is class. This is Aston. Next up, it sounds pretty magnificent. Now this car isn't entirely standard. It has been fitted with the very popular BAMFORD Rose manifolds, which bring with them a healthy little bit of extra power, so this now is likely making about the same as a regular 4.7 Vantage, and a bit of noise. I currently have the exhaust valves closed, and even so, not a bad sounding thing. Lovely tone to it, and if that was the only noise the car made, I'd be very, very happy. However, flick this switch down here and all hell breaks loose. That's rude. really, really rude. It's a dirty kind of NASCAR American noise. I think in many scenarios it might actually be a little bit too much, but as and when the scenario dictates, it's a glorious accompaniment there. Now let's get this thing turned round. Another thing that I'm sure would delight many people is the fact that this comes with a 6-speed manual gearbox. You could have the single clutch automated manual sport shift system with it, and frustratingly, most of the press cars seem to come with one. And today, I often encounter people who think that was the only way the N cars ever came. That's not true. Like the Vantage S, they do exist with a manual, it's just that a lot of them don't have it. As with all Aston Martins of this era, I'm not exactly in love with it. The box itself is nice enough, the action of the throw is okay, it's a little longer than I'd like, a little bit vague in moments, but certainly far from bad. It's the clutch though that I've never really liked. It's just very vague and indistinct, and you're constantly afraid you're going to stall the car, because that is always a possibility. Now sure, even with these modifications, low down the rev range, the car still doesn't have all that much. But that's simply an excuse for you to rev the thing out, and when you do, ho ho ho! Funnily enough, a little bit like the 355, this is another one of those cars where you drive it, you put your foot down and you think, it's not really that quick, is it? Then you look down at the speedo and you go, oh, it is. I think part of the reason you don't realise quite what it's doing is because the speedo goes to 220 mile an hour. So when you're at 80, you're sort of only about a third of the way around it. One thing that wasn't mentioned on that list of changes is anything to do with the steering, and it's here that I do sense a bit of a difference between this and my Sport Pack equipped DB9. That comes with a faster steering rack, and it's something I'd really like to have fitted to this, because though it's got a fair bit of feel, it's just a little slower than I've gotten used to. Beyond that, my only real criticism is the brakes. They're nice enough and they stop you and everything, but at higher speeds I do feel like they just lack a little bit of bite. Heel and toe on occasion also feels just a touch difficult. There's not even a sport button in here to improve the throttle response, which I know is something I normally don't like, but in this I feel maybe would be helpful. It can just be a touch lethargic when you give it that little stab to rev match the engine. And here's the thing with this specific car that I really, really appreciate, and both Zolf and I agree on. When you've got a coupe, you start to become really obsessed with all those things like 0 to 60 times, speed, handling dynamics, the quality of the interior and all that. Take the roof off though, and it changes everything, because then it just becomes a little bit more about you, the machine, that baritone orchestra, which I'm going to turn down for a little bit as I'm going to go through a village in a moment. And I've got to say, this works really well as a convertible. Up until now, in my potential hunt for another Aston, I discounted convertibles entirely, but I'm increasingly beginning to think that maybe I'm making a mistake there, and perhaps actually it'd make a lot of sense. Okay, there is a compromise involved. You just don't have as much boot space. So in the case of the Vantage, you never had back seats, but now you've just got a little bit of storage behind each of them, and the boot itself has been shaved down to accommodate the roof, which I suppose I should probably also show you. We've got no traffic behind us and you can operate it when moving, and it's actually really rather good. I'm impressed by it. Fairly brisk. I'm doing 30 mile an hour. It's pretty good, Aston. Well done. A lot of cars of this age, like the Ferrari California, you'd have to be stationary. And when you're in sort of slow-moving traffic and it starts raining, you do appreciate this sort of thing. Wow. That's lovely. It's nice. It's remarkably refined in here. I appreciate the fact it's also been trimmed so that you feel like you are more or less in a coupe. I swear the headroom is a little bit tighter than it would be if you were. However, they're always compact things, these cars. Visibility with the roof up is not great, but also not terrible. It's the sort of opposite side three-quarter rear view that's a little bit obstructed, but you get that in just about everything with a soft top. You do also notice a little bit of creaking and rubbing of leather, but I think actually that can be mostly sorted out by just putting the seat in a slightly different position. As with many other Astons, I've had a few moments where I've gone to sort of change gear or do something and my wallet has caught the seat adjuster down here and I've wound up sort of reclining myself as I'm accelerating, which is kind of terrifying. Anyway, that's enough of that, I think. Oh, that lovely breeze. The heater in this is really, really good. You've also got heated seats as standard, so even on a day like today where it's sort of 10 degrees, great thing to be in. With the wind deflector in place, it's nice and calm in the cabin. This is a really very usable car, and I'm glad to say that Zolf really has used it. He picked it up as a joint purchase between himself and his business partner, and when he did, even though it was 3 years old already, it had just 2,500 miles on the clock. Apparently, it was bought by a chap for his wife, who wasn't particularly impressed with it, and so basically put it in the garage and didn't really drive it. He, I am very glad to say, has remedied that and put about 50,000 miles on it. In fact, it's just crossed over 50,000 on his way up to me today, which means it's a still very, very usable car. Beautiful steering too. The DB9s is nice enough, but compared to other stuff, it's not that brilliant. The Vantage, just that little bit more clear. It's that little bit extra texture, feedback and weighting coming through. It's really very nice. The suspension also, I'm impressed with it. It's a sport pack setup. It's a passive setup too. There's no adaptive damper button or anything like that for it. And yet, around town, the body is fairly well controlled. There doesn't really seem to be all that much in the way of scuttle shake. So though it's a heavy car, it certainly feels like a fairly solid one. It is only really over the odd sort of pothole, road repair and manhole cover that you do notice an edge of harshness to it, where the car does slam a little bit, but again, it's not really any worse than a lot of other stuff that I drive. Annoyingly, there used to be a really bad section of road there, like a strip, like a really, really evil little speed hump that I used to use to test suspension, and now it's been fixed. How about that? Yeah, it's okay. When you then press on, the suspension does really come alive and work, and all the Bilstein setup Astons do tend to be fairly decent in that regard. Feels very well put together, this car. I'm told build quality of these was already improved over that of the very early sort of 2005 cars. A few reviews noted that, and I've got really very little to say against it. The big important question: how much are you going to pay to get into one of these? It is a limited edition car, which is always going to command a little bit of a premium. But how much of one? Well, I just don't know, because at the moment, there aren't really any N400s for sale. And when they have appeared, they tend to be a coupe or a sport shift, or there's something else going on with them. All the N cars up for sale at the moment are either 420s or 430s, and they're a totally different kettle of fish. The things then to compare this with would be either a regular 4.3 or a regular 4.7. And if you can pick one of these up for closer to 4.3 money than 4.7, particularly if somebody's done all the stuff to a car, like this one has already had done, a few nice upgrades from BAMFORD and everything, it's a really, really good buy. Right now in this market, you could probably pick it up for between 30 to 35,000 pounds, depending on the mileage, the specification, modifications, that sort of stuff. And if you do your due diligence, do your CarVertical check, get it inspected by someone like Bamford Rose, these should be a very, very good thing to own. No, they will never be quite as cheap to run as a 911. They'll always drink a little bit, they'll always cost a little bit more come service time, and they probably will need maintenance just a little bit more regularly. But they're vastly more interesting than a 911 ever will be too. And for me, that alone is worth it. But what you have here is a car that is genuinely good to look at, good to drive, great to listen to, and has a superb badge. I don't really have to make any excuses for it. And if anything, today has given me a real issue, because now I'm thinking that my next Aston might have to be a convertible. More than that, my next Aston might have to be this one. I'm about to sit down for lunch with Zolf, and we're going to have a bit of a chat, I think. Watch this space. Anyway, I want to say a big thank you to Zolf for bringing the car down, and as ever, to you for watching. Don't forget to hit the like button, comment down below, and subscribe if you haven't already. I'll see you for the next one. Bye-bye.